Well, hey, Mary Ellen, how's it going? And hello, everybody else out there. I'm Laurie Ruettimann, and I'm here today to talk about the Shift Conference for you to improve your careers, but also just to talk with my friend Mary Ellen about stuff we've been texting about. So, Mary Ellen, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I was actually thinking like things that we text about, like that are stories about work and people's misbehavior on the jobs. I don't think this is what other people text about, Lori. We do talk about other things. And I haven't sent you a picture of this yet, but Izzy lost her first tooth.
Amazing. That's
So, and she's
fun.
very proud of it. She's very proud of
Well, I
this.
can't.
Especially, she is now, we're talking about the tooth fairy. She's also reluctant to hand it over. And she's like, but how do I know if they're going to give me enough money? It's like, I love this negotiation that you've already got going with this. I'm sorry to people that it's very.
I don't think anybody's watching with their children. Well, I'm excited to finally see your daughters again in real life. That's going to happen because now we're all unmasking because we're all vaccinated, even though we know less than half of the population is probably there fully vaxxed. But, we're all rushing back to work. And so you and I have been texting about that, about returning to work and about bosses and attitudes and behaviors. And I don't know, where do you want to get started this week? What topic do you want to cover?
Actually, let's talk about vaccinations first, because I think one of the things that is coming up more and more is the idea of can we mandate people get vaccines? So it's an interesting thing to me that this vaccine is causing such turmoil in this, because employers have been mandating vaccines for a really long time, like in specific situations. My kids are expected to get vaccines to show up to public school. And I realized you used to work at Pfizer of all places, right? Where I got the Pfizer shot. I'm Team Pfizer. What do you think? Should employers, can they and should they require COVID vaccination before bringing people into the office?
Really good question. So can they, with large permission, they can. There are very few ways that they can get away with saying, an employee can get away with this. So your employer can say, and I'm so eloquent today, I've been talking all day long. Your employer can say you must be vaccinated, and the burden would be on you to prove that you can't for whatever reason. And so it would be a thing that you would have to go down that road. I think should they, which is where my brain went, is the other question, because I don't like it when people tell me what to do. That being said, I do appreciate the fact that there's this idea of public safety, of good health hygiene. And the reason why people are afraid of this vaccine is purely political. It's put in their head. There's no real science behind it. And I think it really gets to something that bothers me about the American education system, that we breed skepticism in the wrong places. We teach inconsistent ways around science in different states. And what you get is a workforce, a talent pool that's not always equal in terms of their education, their comprehension, or their cognition. So I think what we're seeing now is not really vaccine skepticism, but it's just unequal education. Those chickens are coming home to roost. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Actually, I think that this is just one of many places that shows up. Heather, oddly enough, the other thing that I thought about as you were describing that was retirement planning.
Yeah.
Where when we pushed toward privatizing retirement for people and we took away pensions and we said, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, you get control. And we acted like you're now consumers and everybody can go buy all this stuff. And but what percentage of the population is actually cognitively and emotionally, and it's not that people aren't capable, right? But it's like there's training, there's education. I mean, you have to overcome all kinds of, what is that? Oh, our friend, you want to talk about not knowing how to talk this morning? Our friend, the behavioral economist.
Oh, Daniel Crosby. Why are we
Daniel Crosby? I pictured him, and I sat there, I had this whole thing run through my mind of like Daniel Crosby pointing out every mistake that people make when it comes to making decisions like that, and why we can't really trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that a similar factor is at play here. The idea of individual choice when it comes to vaccines, I mean, that's all fine and good, but one would hope that in the same way that if we were planning our retirement on our own, we might go talk to a financial planner or some other, ideally some disinterested party. who had our well-being in mind. And similarly, go talk to your doctor. I mean, the number of times when I've encountered people who've said, oh, I'm just nervous, I don't know about this vaccine, I keep hearing about all these things, and and I'm like, well, do you have a doctor? Like, do you have a primary care physician? So, yeah. I was like, well, do you trust them? Like, do you oh yeah, they're great. Why don't you just go ask them? Go talk to them about it, right? And like, I'm not going to send you links, and I'm not going to tell you to do research on YouTube, right? No. Go talk to that lovely, person who's been providing your medical care for years, whose judgment you've trusted, and ask them, should you get that vaccine?
Yeah, I think if we had more of that happening in our society, employers wouldn't actually have to mandate anything. I mean, this is really my whole thesis in the world. If you take care of your life, if you're on top of your issues, you're going to go to work, you're going to show up, you're going to perform, you're going to work at that intersection of purpose and meaning, and then you're going to go home and live your life, right? And your employer's not going to have to provide you with a sense of identity, and your employer's not going to have to soothe your broken soul or tell you to get a vaccine because you're doing the right thing, not only for yourself and your family, but for society. But when we put employers in this position to boss us around vaccines, then they also get to boss us around about how we talk to one another and whether or not we think we can talk about our own compensation, right? We give them all of this power that they shouldn't have in the first place. So that's like the kernel of what bugs me most about this discussion. People not being educated, and also people feeling like victims. They're victims of a corporation or victims of the government. The only thing you're a victim of is your own limited thinking.
So you used a word that's one of the other things I want to talk about today. You said family.
Yes, I did.
So Laurie, is the workplace your family? Is your employer your family?
I like people in my workplace more than I like my family, so no. And if the workplace were my family, it would be like indentured servitude. It would never end. But instead, with the workplace, and this is something I've been talking about now for over 15 years, with the workplace, you're a consumer. You have choice. You don't like it. Maybe you don't quit today, but you can quit in the future. I can't quit my mom. I can't. I'm trying.
You trying to quit her? You trying to quit her? Right? Or you can't lay off my children. My God, the expenses, they're just too high. You girls gotta cut back on that. No,
I know.
That's not how this works. I'll starve myself. Also, all of these CEOs who do this like family dance, like your workplace is like your family. Okay, are they cutting their pay first? Because inside our families, as like the head of our family, I eat last.
Yeah, of course you do.
Like that's leadership. So if we were really a family, I guess when I hear people say it's like a family, I bristle because I hear poor boundaries, I hear dysfunction, I hear unreasonable expectations, I hear favoritism based on things other than performance. Because I do believe you should play favorites in the workplace, but I believe in the Cy Wakeman model. It's like, oh, of course I play favorites. Would you like me to tell you? Would you like to be one? Let me tell you how. Right? Where there's transparency, and it's about the value that you're creating. That's not how my family operates. I don't know about your family, but
this family discussion is so cyclical, and it tends to come up around times that are economically fraught. And so when I first outed myself as a writer, it was right around the beginning of the Great Recession. So that's back in 2008, right? When we were kind of in the throes of it, when I publicly outed myself. And one of the first things I wrote about was this idea that work is not your family. And it was one of the most heated things I could have written about. Like, people were very angry about this. So what is this? 13 years ago now, work is a family. We're all on board. We all have the same mission. And especially around startup founders, there was this idea that we've burnt the boats. We're all in it together. And I think now we're seeing, in terms of, microaggressions, macroaggressions, hostilities, the issues at base camp, what happens when you don't have professional detachment? What happens when you don't treat people like colleagues and you treat them like your sister? Because I know how my sister treats me. And sometimes it's like a princess, and sometimes I'm the dumbest person in the world. I don't know, depending on what she's feeling that day. So I think a level of professionalism at work is always super healthy. And this idea that we're all family kind of comes up when things are a little uncertain and we want to bind together and fight through things. But there are other metaphors, better metaphors out there. You can be a team, you could be a cohort, you could be, I don't know, pull out your damn thesaurus, but pick a word other than family?
I always like to think about bank heist. I love heist movies. Like, I love heist movies. Old heist movie. There's no heist movie that comes on TV that I can resist. I will stop and watch a heist movie. And that's how I think about it. It's like, okay, I need somebody that's going to pick the lock. I need somebody that's gonna, and then everybody comes together, they trust each other, and you get the money and you split it and you're out, right? You might give each other a head nod if you run into each other in the airport later, but like you come together for the purpose of doing the work. So that's heist movies. People, like, they have great boundaries, and when boundaries are breached, that's when things go wrong.
Oh, that's really
Go look back and now watch your heist movies, and you're like, oh, that guy died because of poor boundaries.
The heist movie that's coming to mind is the one with Marky Mark, where he's driving the Mini Coopers. That's what I'm thinking about right now, but I can't remember what it's called.
Oh my God, the Italian Job, the driving.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I know one heist movie. Well, so we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about family, and we're talking about how things can go wrong. And I had an opportunity this week to really talk about a workplace story gone wrong. And that's Marjorie Taylor Greene coming to work as a white woman, harassing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is, Puerto Rican descent, who's, an American citizen, right? So she's coming to work. This Marjorie Taylor Greene, congresswoman from Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, showing up and yelling at AOC and screaming at her. And before she was even in Congress, she showed up as a tourist and would knock at her door and scream things through her flap. She is clearly harassing AOC. And I was asked the question, if Marjorie Taylor Greene was doing this in corporate America, would she be fired? So I have a POV on this, Mary Ellen. Did I describe the story right? And what do you think?
One thing I was gonna tell you, she's from Georgia. You were mixing her up with the other crazy one, Lauren Boebert, I believe. I was like trying to figure out how to spell it. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I just know she's like Lauren. It's like, or just like, oh, that Colorado lady.
Yes, right.
It's the other one. So, yeah. But Marjorie, Georgia. The people of Georgia saw fit to inflict that upon us. And yeah, you came on to CNN, came on, and they asked you, and it was interesting because as I was watching it, so first of all, you were fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah. And second, I could tell they wanted you to give a very specific answer. So we got Marjorie, Taylor Greene is, to me, clearly stalking.
Yeah.
AOC, and what they wanted you to say was that if this happened in corporate America, someone would step in and she would be fired. But that's not what you said.
No. I said, probably not. In some organizations, they may even make the two of them sit in a conference room and work it out themselves and come to a healthy compromise or a productive solution. Even though AOC is clearly the victim, they would put those two people in a room and say, figure it out, work it out. Or they would bring their bosses together and have them have a conversation. That's called mediation, right? They would do that. But just looking at it, they might even say, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's just being spirited, right? She's engaging in this normal thing we like to do in the office. We have a challenge culture. And I don't think she'd be fired. I mean, maybe in some organizations, but where I've worked, I'm not sure she would be put on a performance improvement plan. So.
No, I think she'd be pulled aside. She might get executive coaching. She might get the investment, essentially, of like, it all depends on how she performs, right? Because we often talk about the brilliant jerk phenomenon.
That's right.
If she is raising money, if she is, I don't know that she's produced much in the way of legislation at this point, right? And I don't know that she ever has to. I think she's like more of a lightning rod. As long as she keeps donations coming in and she can show up and raise money, nobody's going to reprimand her. No. And that is true inside. So that's the day that she stops being effective at that is the day Kevin McCarthy walks away from her. It has nothing to do with how she treats AOC. But that's a part of the game as far as they're concerned. They really do just hound this poor woman.
It's so fascinating to me too, because this woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is known to just like Lauren Boebert, is known to show up to work allegedly with firearms. She believes it's her right. She's also someone who's known as being very physically fit and aggressive, right? She's always touting her CrossFit, and she's going after a petite brown woman and screaming at her in any other circumstance. Like you would hope if this were happening at a Target or at a grocery store, someone would jump in and pull the two of them apart, right? But instead, we're getting maybe we should investigate her, right? And I actually think that would happen in corporate America. Nobody would jump in and try to fire Marjorie Taylor Greene. So that's what I said on CNN. I don't know if they're going to have me back. A friend of mine sent a screenshot of the anchor, John Berman, and he was like, what? I'll have to post it on Twitter. What the hell is this? You know?
No, it's like, I'm sorry. HR is not here to help you. It is not here to help AOC. It's not here. It is here to protect the organization and come up with the reasons why it's okay for her to act that way. That's what HR does. Okay. HR says, well, if she's going to act like that, and well, she raises a lot of money, so we got to figure it out. Okay, well, let's get her some coaching. All right, tell her to dial it back a little. But the truth is, I mean, you're even okay, but here's the thing. Even those people, those anchors that were interviewing you, they too are exploiting the situation, because this is, what is the Don Henley song, it's interesting when people, I want to say it's interesting when people die, but I don't want to, I hope it doesn't come to that, right? I hope certainly this would be the kind of thing where Gavin DeBecker, would be looking at this situation going, warning, warning, warning. This is bad news. But instead they're playing it for the drama. They're bringing you on to say she'd get fired, surely, right? And you're like, that's not.
Yeah, I just try to bring the truth here. And, I understand what they want to do potentially. They want to raise the conversation and maybe even motivate some people to take a look at this if it's happening in their workforce and think, well, maybe we should consider firing this woman. So I'm going to assume some good intent here. But I also believe that because I didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, they didn't know what to do with the conversation. Because some really great follow-up questions would be like, how did we get here? And we could talk about the woman in Central Park who called the police on the bird watcher a year ago, and right away it was assumed that this bird watcher was potentially assaulting her until they, dug a little bit deeper. There are all these ways in which white women have gotten away with so much in our society. So I wanted to say that I'm not about to turn my back on all of the learning we've had in society for all these years by saying corporate America is going to fire someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because clearly they're not. So anyway, that was my big exciting CNN moment. Always fun. I hope I get to come back.
I bet they'll have you back. They'll just prepare a little better next time. They'll be like, aha, yes, that's what we should do. Okay, so one more thing related to this.
Yes.
There's a David Brooks, and I don't know why I read David Brooks. I've
either,
never read David Brooks and walked away going, wow, I didn't think of that. You really enlightened me here.
You know what? David Brooks and Tom Friedman, two sides of the same coin. I just have to say that, I read David Brooks. I'm like, could be Tom Friedman. What's the difference?
This is poor. They need to work on their content value proposition.
Poor thought leadership right there.
So one sounds Jewish, Laurie. Like, that's it. That's all we got.
So, okay. All right. So you tell me what you learned about David.
So, and I thought about this because you mentioned like the corporate America part, like the idea that these folks thought that corporate America would step in and stop this. So David Brooks's column this week was about, it was kind of this is how wokeness ends. And so first of all, wokeness as a concept as used by right wingers has nothing to do with the way that the idea of being woke originated out of the Black community. They have developed something that is what they are opposing is entirely a fiction of their own. In this case. The way that term gets used, and it's really upsetting because what they're fighting against, any reasonable person would fight against, and luckily it's not real. But David has this idea that wokeness, as he calls it, has taken over all of corporate America, and all these people are just getting canceled left and right, and and they've taken over these elite institutions, and that.
I wish.
It's like, sir, no, maybe in the marketing department, like they're putting stuff out. The HR is putting things out in the employer brand, but go look at whatever they might have in that campaign. Go look at their leadership lineup and tell me. So first of all, there were two things in this article that deeply offended me. One, it started off with the words, my friend Rod Dreher. And Rod Dreher is a fellow alum of my high school who I am not going to lie, we have a Facebook group that is half the posts are all like, look at this motherfucker. He outed a trans kid at the school. For those of you who don't know, I went to a boarding school for public kids. He actually outed a kid.
A terrible human being. Okay.
For game, right? For game. And he's writing about how like this is this hateful ideology that's just completely incongruous for true conservative Christians. But like, so one, David Brooks is giving this man airtime. I'm like, holy crap. And then he ends by insulting Unitarianism. He quotes Tyler Cohen saying that wokeness will be like Unitarianism, widely admired, but with no passion or commitment. I'm Unitarian.
Well, I know you are.
And you know what? Unitarians were really active in the civil rights movement of the 60s, and they're really active in it now. And I can tell you that we have not taken over corporate America.
No, you have not.
No, we haven't.
Mary Ellen, I think it's really interesting because there are a lot of corporate leaders out there who are reading David Brooks and Tom Friedman seriously. And they're like, yeah, this woke thing is coming for me. Just like Me Too was coming for them. Just like Black Lives Matter was coming for them. And yet they're still there.
Right?
Like, I wish this woke straw man was a true thing because we'd see incredible change. We'd see incredible turnover. And then these babies would really have something to whine about. But instead, what they're whining about is something that's all imagined. And they're getting us worked up to distract us from some of the real issues that are taking place.
Right. It shuts down the real conversation, which brings us back to Shift, because Shift is an event that you and I have created in order to help people have real conversations about what they need to do to survive in this bullshit era of work, because we've all got to figure out how to feed our families and care for our communities and hopefully do some good work that we're proud of. You've got to do it for like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
So that's why we created this event.
Well, I think that's fair. And I'm super proud of the lineup. I'm going to say it, even though you hate it, no scrubs, right? All best-selling authors, all people with big ideas. Everybody on there is really committed to a vision and a version of the world that's, diverse, equitable, inclusive, where people feel a sense of belonging. So we really try to create an agenda that would look like our audience, look like the people that we interact with, and certainly had good stories and relatable stories for everybody. So I'm very proud of the agenda. I'm very proud of the speakers. And, it's free for everybody out there. And we just hope you sign up and you say yes and you spend some time with us thinking about how to fix work by fixing yourself. That's what it's really all about. Yeah.
And what I love about this lineup too is these are all incredibly optimistic people, right? They are fundamentally an optimistic bunch. And we're not saying, oh, woe is me, just there's nothing you can do, work is awful, because no, they're actually, work, there are a lot of things that are, a lot of problems. We want to empower you to address them and help you, get the resources. And one thing I did before we part today, I was really excited about the newest speaker that we just officially added to the lineup. We have our closing keynote, Laurie, and he was your recruit. So why don't you tell everybody about him?
Yes, he's my dear friend, Mike Kim. I know him through my friend, Jennifer McClure. And Mike Kim is known as someone who's a great marketer, but also someone who's really passionate about personal branding in a non-cheesy way. And I thought that was really important to talk about. Like, how do you be the brand of you, but do it with authority and credibility and a little bit of authenticity, and not be this cheesy dude who's out there just talking about things? How do you demonstrate that you have the ability to solve problems for other people and be of service in the world? So that's why I like Mike Kim. I also think Mike Kim is really interesting because he's someone who has performed at very high levels and very, very senior levels within organizations, but he's also incredibly accessible. And so he can kind of float in that executive world, but also float in the world of people like you and me who are just looking to do good work and get back to our lives. So Mike Kim is just pretty terrific. He's got a new book coming out. He's going to be a podcast guest on Punk Rock HR. So I'm kind of on the Mike Kim bandwagon, which is weird, but I love him. I'm grateful to my friend Jennifer McClure for introducing us, and he's just a terrific guy.
I want him. I totally want him on my bank heist team. After that, it's like, what job does he get? I think he gets like the George Clooney job, like in Ocean's 11. He's real charming, and he's kind of, does he have a tux?
I'm sure Mike Kim could get a tux. He's connected. So absolutely. Well, I'm so excited about the agenda. And Mary Ellen, I'll let you close it out today. But one of the things I want to say is that I'm trying to do the work in my career that I wish would have been done when I was struggling. Had I had these resources, had I had people in my world like you, Mary Ellen, or had access to Julie Lithcott-Hames or, anybody, Ching Valdezco on our agenda, I think my career might have been different. And so that's what I'm trying to do, right the wrongs in my life for other people. So there you go.
Yeah, and I'd say if we could have one sort of thing to ask you as we head out for the week is just to think about how you can help somebody else, especially, graduating. Like right now, this week was college graduation for a lot of people. It was high school graduation for a lot of folks. And these kids, and I'm going to say kids, even for these 22-year-olds, they are entering an absolute shit show of an economy that I know that as a Gen Xer, we like to talk about how bad it was when we walked out. But look, well, that's how we got like this. Okay. Yeah. You want to know how we got so bitter and judgmental? The economy did this to us. So when we've just been skeptical of institutions ever since.
I think that's
so. As we watch these kids are reaching out and they're trying to figure out what to do with themselves, I would encourage you to go find one of them, find a way to help with them, send them some resources, make some introductions. They're going to be scared to ask you for that help. So when you see them, don't let them just flounder. Be like, hey, what's your plan? Okay. And then don't be judgy about it. Okay. That's the other thing is the structure has changed. You can't just go get paid jobs. The entry-level job is dead. It's you see them and they're must have 1 to 3 years of experience. Well, what are these kids supposed to do? So create opportunities for them, share resources for them, give them words of encouragement that it gets better, but that they have to work on it. I
love it. Well,
go help these kids.
I'm with you on this.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this week. We'll be back next week talking about God knows what.
What's in my phone?
Hopefully it's not an escalation of Marjorie, Taylor Greene's wacky ass QAnon behavior, but
being,
yeah. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, Laurie. It's always good to check in with you, and we'll see y'all soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.